call the meeting to order. Set the agenda.
Move to set the agenda. Second.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Let's proceed. The approval of the agreement with Montcross Chamber of Commerce for Christmas Eve event management.
Thank you, Mayor. Before we introduce this item, I'll just welcome everybody to City Hall for our September Council workshop. Because transportation is such an important issue, we wanted to make sure that we had a record of this, so we are filming the meeting. I don't think it's live film, but we'll upload it to our YouTube channel and we'll push that out, let the public know about it. And we are doing audio, so these microphones are live, so these microphones are live.
No sound language.
Just appropriate and in order. That's right. So with that, I'll go over the first item, which is the approval of the agreement with the Montcross Area Chamber of Commerce for their Christmas event management. This is something that we've done every year for the last many years. It's primarily the Christmas parade management, but also our Christmas tree lighting ceremony, and then just general Christmas event promotion. This is $6,000, which is the amount that was approved for last year, and it covers the coordination for the Christmas parade, the tree lighting, and the other events that they help us promote in downtown Belmont. You see the agreement. It's essentially the same agreement that's on pages 4, 5, and 6 of your packet. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer, and Mark Jordan from the Chamber is here if you have any questions for the Chamber on it. We appreciate the Chamber doing this on our behalf, so that we don't have to do
No,
it.
Julie know, but I have no idea.
Julie doesn't. And unfortunately, she's at a funeral and she should be here any minute, but if you do have questions, I'll try.
I was going to make an observation that your entry fees are lower than a lot of the municipalities throughout the county. So might be an opportunity for you guys there to increase that.
We appreciate Montcross's participation in this. That's always a great event for the city of Belmont. Really great.
So there's no questions, and this does require action. Normally, we don't take action in a council workshop, but because of the timeliness of this, I would request that you actually vote to accept this agreement.
I'll make a motion to accept this agreement.
I'll second.
Second, motion is second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Good. Very good. That makes it easy, doesn't it, huh?
Sure. Yeah.
Good. That's great.
Good job, Mark. Thank you.
Yeah, screw it up.
I should have asked for an interview.
Then we would have been here a little bit longer.
Don't.
Next item is the transportation project discussion with the NCDOT staff.
And Mayor, if we could, let's do that after the update for the water and sewer master plan,
Sure,
because
okay.
Randy Gates from the Gas and Cleveland MPO is on her way, but she's probably
Okay.
stuck in traffic. So I think she's making her point. So she had prepared this presentation, so I'd like for her to be here for that discussion. So
Very good.
if it's okay, we'll just flip 2 and 3.
Absolutely.
Should have said that before we move to set the agenda.
Sorry, I'm asking for some flexibility. I was hoping item 1 would take a lot longer. She could be here. I'll get your deal set up for you.
Put it where they can see.
We're gonna get old school for this. Wow.
Has done that in a long time, have we?
Couldn't find the overhead projector.
Of course, it doesn't fit. Side screen. Right up here. And if you can't see that, big ones.
J83.
Okay. The purpose of this meeting is to bring you up to date on the master plan that was completed in 2007. So with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 people on the council, we actually know that this has been in place. And the basis for it, I just want to go through what's occurred in the last 14 years. That you're aware of what's happening, but this study was undertaken back in 2007 because we were starting to see interest in properties, particularly the Pittenger property here, the middle school property, the Henry's Chapel property, River Mist, and then going south, Reflection Point was there at the time, but Morgan's Branch, actually the next one was Lakeview, Lake Point, and then Morgan's Branch, and then of course down here. So we've had a lot of our growth issues down here. This is the area that will be coming up next, and River Mist is ready to start construction. They've got all the city approvals that need for that. And just by chance, I got a phone call the other day from an engineer who says, what's it take to start this one? So I felt that it was important to kind of bring you up to date and show you this, giving you a big map there. Some of the elements, like I said, this came out of a concern to how we were going to provide water and sewer to the South Peninsula region. This is really just covering the area below the core of the city, as it was back then. But you can see there's extensions required. In the South Point region, the first developer was down here at Reflection Point, and they put in a pump station and the force main all the way up here, all the way up to Stowe Road. That's pretty lengthy, as you can imagine. They also put in a water main that went the opposite, all the way down to Reflection Point. Our policy then, and still our policy, is that the developer has to install water mains. We said it's got to be an 8-inch pipe. Now, by the state, you can put in a smaller pipe, but the 8-inch is better fire protection. So in the case of Reflection Point, the city reached a developer's agreement. We would pay for the oversizing from an 8-inch water line here to a 12-inch. That's how we got our 12-inch here.
The difference between 8 and 12, right?
Yes.
That they'd have.
Yes.
The 8. Yes. Okay.
And on the pump station, we were able to convince Reflection Point's engineer that they needed to look at a little bit bigger pipe because in theory, they thought they could get by with a 6-inch. And we said, no, we want you to use an 8-inch. We didn't pay any extra for that. So that got them off and running and going. After Reflection Point came the Lake Point development. We had a developer agreement there to be connected to the water line on Southport Road. We put in a 16-inch because we knew at that time that this was coming. So he did that, and we paid for the oversizing between an 8 and 16. And then his pump station came back and tied into the same force main as Reflection Point. And it's a little iffy when you put the two pump stations on the same force main because you have no control over when they pump. They'd be pumping against each other, in which case that raises the head condition and pumps don't pump as well. But in any case, back then we were Reflection Point was slowly building out, so that was not a major concern. We got that in. And then after that, Morgan's Branch came in. We talked to them about pump station. We had this plan in place, and we said, okay, Morgan's Branch, you're going to have the regional pump station. And that's the pump station that all the pump stations down here pump to. So we just have one pump on the force main going here. And we had a developer's agreement there to pay to oversize that pump station. Because one, they had to take care of these two pump stations pumping the force main gravity necessary. But we also knew that this was coming, so we got this pump station as big as we could get it with the existing force main and the hydraulic conditions. In addition to pipe size, which cause pipe friction, which flows down your flow, and that causes the head condition. We also have the elevation, this difference here. And those two added together is how you design your pump, because you have to pump against that head. So in any case, there's a developer's agreement for that as well. And we're in pretty good shape down here. You know, we got approved for a lower bedroom flow, I think primarily based on this area here, because this is a low children neighborhood. And you have, in South Shore, you'll have a 7-bedroom house, 2 people, but you have to count by the number of beds. So we have that situation that we hope, I certainly believe the World's River development, which is annexed by the city, can give them a green light to go. Of course, for the Lakeview Farms folks, and I haven't completed all the calculations necessary to see whether that's going to work or not. What you have to do in this case is you have to determine what capacity is available in Morgan's Branch. And the way we've been doing that is we look at the current flows to that pump station. And we've been doing that for about 2 years as we're trying to get that information. But we look at the average daily flow, and I go out there and actually count how many vacant lots, things like that. The existing flows for the houses that are occupied, that gives you a number, and you take the number of vacant lots or planned for development, like in Plain, there's, you know, commercial areas, high density here, and so on. And you add that in, and then that tells you how much of your capacity is taken in the pump station.
I think, if I may, McLean, is it some of McLean to be South Carolina? Is that not our concern?
Well, there's only a dozen or 20 houses, and that will come in. We've been agreeable to that. So that's where we sit there. Primarily, and we're working with these folks up here on the west side, the property, Delaware. And they will have a similar situation to down here. They will have one regional pump station that will pump over to this point where we have gravity sewers and 16-inch force. We will end up with this regional pump station and this connecting to the same force main here. And I think because this is at the top of the hill, it won't overly affect the hydraulics. But they were working on that. That first part is this upper part here, and this shows the blue lines. We didn't really talk about, but the blue lines are proposed water mains, and in this case, they will put in this 12-inch water main and then through the middle school property, and do that with their first development. On the east side, we were having very active discussions with the developers of orange and green properties back in 2007. So we were looking at that, and we determined that we needed a water line that would go connect through. That water line would go all the way up to a 12-inch up here by Dory Drive. Goes that far. And that would take care of the water issues here at elevated tank site, that he still owns that piece of property there. But that tank is now being moved down on the new power in that property. So we had that, then they were gonna have a pump station here, wastewater pump station. Actually, it's shown up here. And the Greystone property, which has its own little pump station, that pump station will be done by gravity sewer down to the new one, and this one will be our east region. So we're in good shape there. We had the cooperation, we actually started working with developer agreements in 15 years, 14, between the River Mist folks and Henry's Chapel Road folks. And we were getting the numbers for it and everything else. We could come to the city council and say, okay, here's what we'd like to do. Both of those just fell apart when they had a depression or recession. And now, this one, River Mist, they're very anxious to get going. We'll point out that that property has changed hands and it's owned by the same people that own Town Square, Belmont Road Square. And at the meeting, we had a pre-construction meeting on River Mist. At that meeting, Travis working for that outfit said that they have rented out every house in that development and have people waiting in line for the few houses that are being constructed. They're essentially rented out. So they're very interested in this 86 lots here. They're quite anxious to get going. They see the opportunity. It would take about a year to get improvements in place that they can be certain. However, the condition we put on them when they submitted plans for River Mist was they had to, River Mist, by the way, will be on gravity sewer, which will go up to the Peninsula pump station, which is right here. And we said, well, while you're doing that, you need to run a water main loop, South Point Road, go down the middle of the subdivision, and then go up and parallel with gravity sewer up to Hanks Creek or Lakeview, the entrance to your Lake Ridge. And too many lakes. Anyway, so we have told them that they need to design a water main that moves through here, and then also their gravity sewer goes through here. But it didn't make sense that we're doing the work in the Bellwood neighborhood, which is not in the city, and not plan for the future pump station down here. So we're telling them to also put in a pipe for the force main. So they have come back to us and they would like to have a developer agreement looking for reimbursement for the oversizing of the water main from an 8 to a 12, and then putting in the force main, which I think we ended up with 8 or 10 inch force main in there. Consistent with what agreements that had been reached out here. So we will come back to you probably at the next council meeting with their agreement. We will have time, I hope, for parks to review it and work through it, but that's pretty much the situation there. They've given me a cost figure of about $600,000, and that gets the force main all the way up to the existing pump station, and it'll be capped on both ends for right now. That gets 12-inch water main down to their property. So if they got a loop, and then of course they'll have the gravity that they have to pay for anyway. So we will have a proposal, I think, by the next meeting for that. I do want to point out that when we established the new system development fees, when we did that last year, system development fees were calculated using this value of existing water and sewer assets, but also had a list of projects that it would fund. And one of those projects on that list was this 12-inch water. So it's on that list. That's pretty much it, I think. You know, we still need to resolve some stuff down here. This, I think, is gonna take care of it. If you look at all the stars, those are all little local pump stations they're gonna have down here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And as they're doing that, they will take the Belmont pump station will go out of service and be brought down by gravity to here, so we're just running one pump station for that. We're doing the same thing up here for Point Crossing pump station, and then there's also one in Southport Ridge pump station there. So we're getting new pump stations, but we're trying to take some of the older ones out of service.
Yeah.
So we're trying to keep that simple. We have 25, 26 pump stations in the city right now. Quite a few.
I don't think you can keep that too simple, though.
Well, the thing is, it's all topography.
Yeah.
I mean, you're in a beautiful location between two lakes, but everything slopes to the lake, so.
Yeah. I appreciate all your work.
Well, I want to make sure, because we haven't really talked about master plan for quite some time.
The 600,000 you mentioned, is that total or is that total, or would that be our share?
That would be our share.
Anybody have any questions?
Just Jerry, with all these pump stations and everything that you brought to us today, the only question I have is, are we delivering adequate pressure throughout the peninsula?
Well, the pump stations are for the wastewater. Yeah. This peninsula, once we get this elevated tank up, and it's under design right now, that should resolve any pressure issues down here. The booster pump station, which is off the map, up in North Belmont, that is at the permitting stage. They have the plans and everything ready to submit. They're submitting in the state to get the permits, and we'll be ready to go with that. The good news was that Adrian and I met with the, I want to point to him, and I can't get up there. But we met with North Carolina Filtration owner, and he's agreeable to sell us a little piece right in his front yard, essentially. With our booster pump station, it will look pretty much the same as the booster pump station in Belmont Abbey College, if you go in the north entrance. Yeah, it's right there. So it's a good looking facility. We'll have a generator, but it'll increase pressures up there for existing customers who are very unhappy about it, and for the habitat, which would be the furthest north. We did get some complaints about 2 weeks ago because our North Belmont water tank was taken out of service for a week while it was getting its annual maintenance, where they actually drain the tank down, they check it, they paint whatever needs to be painted on the inside, and the whole works. So it takes it out of service. Then once they get all that taken care of, then they fill the tank again and chlorinate it, then they got to test it to make sure that the water is clean, then they drain the tank again, and then they fill it. Well, there were several people that called Public Works to complain about pressure.
Yeah, they call, thank you, after you got it fixed.
Well, I didn't, but it, you know, it supports that whole neighborhood, just like the South Tank will support all that.
And I think everything's on schedule, the schedule you laid out at our last meeting for the North Belmont booster pump station, and the plans and the.
Plans are essentially
When is
done.
that date? Somebody asked me to call Belmont.
I think they're planning about the middle of October.
Okay.
And then they had told us it was 120 days. This is gonna be a pre-manufactured pump station. It's gonna come on the back of a truck, but it won't have beautiful brick on the outside or anything like that. And, pre-engineered and built in a factory. Same company that did Belmont College.
Right.
Same company I worked with 30 years ago in Chicago that did a station for me there. So they're a good outfit. But, the problem is, like everything else, it's hard to get parts. It's gonna involve pumps, motor controls, and some of these things that just, we don't know what it's gonna be. But, we're shooting to have it by
June.
June. So,
And the,
And I've got an appraisal on order for the property purchase.
so that should come to, all that, the things that need to come to us will come to us as envisioned.
Yes, and plenty of time.
Okay.
All right, so then saying early to midsummer is a reasonably valid timeline.
Yes.
Respond.
now, we have heard from Habitat people, they talked about putting individual booster pumps in the houses just to increase for the house that they can do. And that's fine, but, you know, obviously, don't want everybody to have a booster pump station. But, you know, if you have a well system, if you're on a well system, for instance, your well's pumping to a little tank that's got a pump on it that gives you the pressure you need to keep your house. I'm real confident. I think the habitat development, when it comes, is gonna, they kind of indicated that's gonna be a fast build out. Not just the habitat, but the affordable housing that they will sell retail in it. The developer that they introduced to us is a builder, and so he's able to get things. I heard on the news today that the lumber prices are coming down. All of a sudden, everybody's able to get lumber, and that's, I guess, primarily a transportation issue, slowing that down. Yeah, I think that once we get past today's stock market issue, yeah, it'll all start coming back. We hope so. Yeah. Well,
So for this meeting, we want just direction that you're okay with us continuing to work with the new owner developer of the River Mist on a developer agreement to continue to implement this 2007 master plan.
I think it makes sense to plan out the future. I do want to emphasize that it makes sense to, you know, make the pipe wider, I guess you could say, bigger. Large, bigger, but, you know, I just, you know, we still, contemplating that something might be at Henry's Chapel down the road. It makes sense to do that now. You know, I just want to, emphasize that that's not any sort of commitment to what form any future development may or may not take at Henry's Chapel, and whether it may or may not be approved what is currently thought to be put there.
Right, and so if we did not.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, I, you know,
Yeah, that was a very good legal disclaimer. Yes. So if we did not do a developer agreement with the River Mist developer, then the Henry Chapel Road developer, at some time when they would build something that they're entitled to build by the zoning ordinance, would have to go through and rip out everything that River Mist had just done. They would have to disturb the Bowen, Bellwood, and River Mist neighborhoods twice.
The Bellwood, little section of Bellwood that turns south, that's going to be totally removed and replaced under this project. So if they replace the road, and they come back 5 years, 3 years, or something like that, oh, by the way.
Yeah.
And just to, I know we sort of hinted at it, and you had the question about the cost of the city's portion of oversizing. city would be reimbursed by the system development fee that the builders would pay for River Mist and Henry Chapel Road. So it's not money coming out of, our just sort of general utility fund, our ratepayers or water customers paying. That's what the system development fees are set up to do.
And those system development fees would be fine legally, because I know we've had some issues
Correct.
with system development fees in other locations in the past.
Yes, we changed it a couple years ago to meet the new statute.
Took care of that.
So that should not be an issue. Nobody should, well, you can't say no one's going to.
They were set based on criteria that the state had.
And we used the consultant to do it and follow the state's guidelines.
Well, if a consultant said so, then it must
Yeah.
be.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Jerry, let me ask you, your main through what's known as the Peninsula property, does that mirror at all a projected path of the Southport Parkway?
It sort of does, yes.
Or does?
Yeah.
Okay. Looks like it's.
That was the intent, but that parkway hadn't been defined at the time. We just knew that there would be something.
So we'll make sure that we coordinate the transportation and the utilities and the plantings and all that.
What just struck me, just
Yeah.
suddenly, so that looks approximately, I know we got a right of way either side on that, parkway that looks approximately the path.
Any other questions for Jerry?
So we're okay to proceed with working with the River Mist
Very good.
development.
I keep this in my office, so get tired. We'll keep the little ones. No,
I'll keep these right now. Thank you, Jerry.
okay.
Let's go back to item number 2.
Thank you. So we wanted to have an opportunity, I've been giving you some updates on our DOT projects and the funding or lack of funding and the timeline and time horizons for some of the major projects that the NPO has scored and given to the state for consideration. But we wanted to have the experts to come and answer more detailed questions and provide an overview of the major NCDOT projects in Belmont in our area, and then be able to answer some questions. I know we've had some very specific questions about traffic signal timing and about some specific projects and timing for those development projects. So I'd like to have Randy Gates, who is the administrator of the Gaston Cleveland Lincoln MPO, come up and give an update on that. We also have Mark Stafford, who is the Division 12 division engineer, and Byron Engel, who is the Division 12 traffic engineer from the great city of Shelby, joining us. So they're NCDOT Division 12 in Shelby. So we appreciate you joining us.
Does she have a microphone speaking to, so the recording picks it up?
She's welcome to use mine.
Pretty loud, so maybe I'll pick it up. Apologies for being late. I have no other excuse other than I was deep in a presentation for Catawba Crossings for tomorrow. Luckily, there was not a lot of traffic, and Chief Hawkins wasn't out on 85 to get me there. So
follow her home. Well, here.
So thank you for the invitation. There's other experts in the room with Division 12 that can answer probably more of the technical questions if you've got anything about any of these projects. But just wanted to give an overview of projects that are funded. Design is underway. They are going to be constructed, and also projects that we are looking at in the future and trying to get funding for, and then additionally other regional projects that we're working on that are just in the planning phases. So probably the most visible of all of the funded projects is the I-85 widening. And I'm sure you get an earful from your constituents who are trying to get into Charlotte, into and out of Charlotte, the issues with I-85. So this is actually combining 3 projects, and these numbers probably don't mean much to you, but with NCDOT, we kind of live by these SIP numbers. But I-5719, that is the I-85 widening project from exit 17, which is US 321 in Gastonia, to NC 273 or exit 27, so about 10 miles of widening. I-85 from the existing 6 lanes to 8 lanes. That includes 8 interchanges, 6 roadway crossing bridges, and an additional 4 railroad bridges. So it's a massive project for our area. Looking to hold public meetings in the summer of 2022. So we had public meetings back, I believe, in May of 2019, where NCDOT and the project consultants unveiled the design options for the interchanges. There were multiple options for a number of the interchanges. They have gone and they've done further work to really identify the selected design options, which I will go over each interchange within the Belmont area as part of this presentation. But looking to bring those recommendations back to the public next summer, so summer of 2022. This is a design build project. Let date right now is December of 2023. As long as that hasn't shifted, I don't think it has. Programmed amount in the STIP currently, that's the State Transportation Improvement Program. Sorry, we use a lot of acronyms, so stop me if I say one just out of habit.
Let date.
Let date is when it will go out for bids and start the construction. Or start the design build piece. So programmed amount in the current State Transportation Improvement Program is just shy of $400 million. I think it's public information at this point that new cost estimates are nearing $800 million for that project. So there are some things that, from my understanding, the consultants that looked at this new cost estimate, there are some things that are really outside of the scope of the project. So they're going to be looking at that. The division is looking at that. Central office in Raleigh is looking at that to try to get that cost down. And also, I guess, thinking through some funding mechanisms for the project. So, yeah, just note that. So I wanted to show you the preliminary design options for the interchanges here in Belmont. So for exit 26, looking at what NCDOT and the project consultants are calling the Montcross option for northbound I-85. That was provided directly from Belmont Abbey College to NCDOT when they were looking at the different design options for this particular interchange. It also includes a tight diamond design option for southbound I-85. And so any technical questions can be answered by NCDOT over these designs. It does include signalized intersections at both ramp terminals and also roundabouts that you can see on the north side at the entrance of Belmont Abbey as well as Woodlawn. That will also be included in the design. So this interchange design does incorporate the future rail trail and the Belmont trolley. So that they did take into consideration those plans as well as the college master plan. So again, working directly with the college on that. Also with this particular area, it includes U3608, which is the improvements to NC7 or Main Street from I-85 to Wilkinson Boulevard. So this particular design that has been selected to move forward with realigns NC7 from the proposed Montcross design option to the intersection of Wilkinson Boulevard. NC7 will be narrowed, the existing NC7 will be narrowed to 2 lanes away from the church, which is a historic area. And also the railroad bridge, which is the PNN spur line, will be replaced in place with this project. Replacement bridge will need to have a single track and also width for the Belmont Rail Trail. So all of that has been taken into consideration with this design option. Also in this area is U5800, which is the intersection improvements to Franklin or Wilkinson and NC7 Main Street. So the chosen design option for this is the reduced conflict intersection. So on August 19th, and I'm just going to give you some background information for the selection of this intersection design option. Back in August, so last month, the State Historic Preservation Office determined that this option would have no adverse effect on Belmont Historical District or the PNN Railway Linear Historic District. So there's 2 historic districts in this area that we are trying to minimize impacts to. And this option had fewer relocations, a total of 5 businesses with this intersection improvement option. The other design alternative that was studied was the all-movement signalized intersection improvement. But the State Historic Preservation Office determined that this option would have an adverse effect on the historic districts that I had mentioned, has a higher potential relocations with 9 businesses, 6 residences, 1 including an apartment building, and it also requires pedestrians to cross more lanes of traffic. So most likely this project, the I-85 project in general, is going to have federal funding. Right now it's state funding. Most likely it's going to have federal funding on it. So this project is federalized with the introduction of that federal funding. Federal law is we have to avoid any historic areas for projects at all costs. So that is why this design option was selected.
Randy, did I read in the document that you sent out last week that the realignment of Main Street avoids the Southport neighborhood?
I have not read that whole document. I know it does avoid, there's a cemetery there, that it does avoid. I did not look at the details of the other.
We get questions every now and then from the residents of that neighborhood. They're obviously concerned about, losing their property, through this project. And I think they maybe had some surveyors out there looking at the total project boundary.
It looks like it goes through Keep Hawthorne.
Yes, it looks like it gets to the commercial properties, but, I thought I saw somewhere in that document that it was avoiding the residential, neighborhood there.
Is that Keith Hawthorne, the black building, just for my reference?
No, that's just, yeah, the CrossFit and the chiropractor.
Okay.
Are they only impacted businesses, the ones for that new road being cut from, I think it's 7,000.
Well, let's see. Right there.
I think the total project boundary, because the neighborhood is that hatched, right? I think that was another,
Yeah.
like another historic.
Yeah, it's labeled as the Mill Village.
Yes. But the roadway itself, I think, stayed out of the neighborhood based on that document, unless that's just read
It does look like it. And again, I didn't read that whole document yet, but,
What'd you do about it?
How close to the, it looks like it's pretty close. Do you have any idea?
I do not. I don't
These
know.
are still preliminary at this time, so there's no, at this point, there's no details. And as Randy alluded to, some of the assumptions in the design that was put into the estimate as far as how far out was pretty extreme in some circumstances. So that's something that we're looking at, instead of just using slope studies plus an arbitrary distance, right? So, but that gives you the general zone that, without drainage, without permanent easements or anything like that, it might be detailed.
So if anybody asks, it's an approximation.
Correct.
And subject to change until it's finalized.
What was the date on this project?
This is all wrapped in with the I-85 widening project.
Which the design build starts December 23,
That's the let date, yes.
and then, but we don't know when construction would start. And then, as my understanding is that there's no, because it's design build, DOT is not telling you it could start 3/21, it could start in the middle, it could start on multiple locations based on the contract.
That's my understanding.
That is correct, and you also have to, take into consideration, they'll have to design for that, so it's not like it's gonna let the traditional scene, where we've done the design, and then walk right away, do all the utilities, and then let. So there will be a ramp-up period
sort of thing. But they'll also, as part of that, they'll be able to pick areas where they can get to work quicker than if we had to clear the entire 10-mile corridor. It would take us years to do all of that. Yeah, because it should accelerate the final overall.
So this is part of the I-85 widening. Is this going to happen concurrently with the I-85 widening?
It will all be wrapped into that overall project. So it goes back to that design build team, to see where they're gonna, you know, the big part about the 85 project are the interchanges, right? They're not gonna be able to widen 85 proper because of the constraints with all the interchanges and the bridge. So they'll more than likely pick a variety of interchanges and structure work to get started on while they're buying and moving utilities on other sections. So, yeah, not for us to say exactly what that, the successful team's gonna pick as far as
They would be aware that once they start the widening of I-85, the release valve for that is going to be 74, which then this would come into play.
correct. That'll be all part of their traffic control operational plan. Figure that, work through that.
Well, I mean, if they're concurrent, we're going to be in a really tough spot. Because the traffic's going to bleed on the 74, which is going to then be constrained by the work being done here. So I hope they're cognizant of that.
Another exit here in Belmont that I wanted to touch on, but also note that this is very preliminary, is the design option for exit 27. Right now, the selected interchange design option is the diverging diamond interchange, which would accommodate the Claremont Hospital development there on the northwest quadrant. But due to the overall cost increases of the project, this particular one, NCDOT and the design consultants are looking a little bit further into, you know, just seeing if improvements are needed or what improvements may be needed. There are already 8 lanes underneath this structure, so it may be that they don't have to do much with this interchange. So more to come on that one. But I did want to show that this is in the report right now as the initially selected alternative. So another project that is funded is the intersection improvements at Wilkinson and Park, NC 273. So this is funded for right-of-way and utilities in FY 2029. This one has been delayed some. Construction right now is in future years, but it's still considered a committed project, meaning it does not have to go back through the prioritization right now. Now, if cost estimates have increased here, it may require it to go back through. We're kind of looking to determine as a state work group what projects stay in and what projects may have to be rescored just due to overall cost increases across the state. So right now, though, this project is programmed at $853,000. The new cost estimate for this is over $16 million. So again, gonna have to relook at this one. I did want to note too that we submitted this intersection for a future grade separated interchange. We did so in P 6.0. That's the most recent round of prioritization. I do have some information on that. That current process is being halted due to funding issues across the state. So we're still waiting kind of to see where that shakes out. But I can tell you we won't see any new projects that are funded this round. But still an important project that we'll be looking at in future rounds.
I wonder how many, we took that picture with so few cars out there, that's why, there's always cars out there.
That one came from Google Maps, so it's whenever the Google car goes through there in the middle of the day.
So Randy, you said this is currently programmed for right-of-way in 2029,
Correct.
but construction in the,
Future years, so,
and do you know when the future years?
no. Right now, the current SIP is 2020 to 2029.
Okay. But it would have to be rescored if the cost is significantly increased? So-
Most likely.
So an increase from 800,000 to 16 million is considered significant?
Yes,
So what you're saying is it's gonna have to get rescored?
I believe so.
Okay, which means it'll probably get pushed back into the 2030s or 2040s?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So no help coming on that intersection for 10 or 15, 20 years?
Right now, it is programmed for 29. And the
That's what I
funding
thought I heard you say, I just wanted to make sure.
So another funded project is the replacement of the US 74 Wilkinson Boulevard Catawba River Bridge, which we all know is extremely important. So, this is from NC7 or West Catawba to the east bank of the Catawba River, widening that, structure to 6 lanes, and I've got some visualizations on the next screen. So that will include bicycle and pedestrian accommodations with a 10-foot wide multi-use path on both sides of that bridge, which we're really excited about, at a cost of $44 million. These are some renderings of what this bridge could potentially look like. So we are hoping to have a public meeting, I would think, within the next 6 months for this. But we have worked through a visual, or an aesthetics committee, that has Belmont, Gaston County, Mount Holly, Mecklenburg County, all working together on what this bridge structure will look like. We know this is kind of our one shot for a very long time, as the gateway into Gaston County from Mecklenburg County. So we've really put a lot of thought in what this bridge could look like, with the, you know, the brick, stamped brick pattern, what that looks like, into the water. The visualization here is straight across. The bridge is gonna have, some curvature to it because of the navigable waters of the Catawba River. So this is not depicting exactly. I'm hoping we'll be able to update these before we take this out for public comment. But, we looked at the indents, what that would look like, any future signage, you know, what the lighting is gonna look like, what that, 10-foot wide multi-use path. We've looked at even having these overlook options, for the bicyclists and pedestrians to be able to take a rest along the bridge, look over, into the river. So those are things that we have been working on, and again, hoping to have, public comment. Don't know if that will be in person, if that will be a virtual setting, yet to be determined, but hopefully within the next few months, we'll have something on the calendar.
So those are not fishing piers.
Those are not fishing piers. Would you like them to be?
No diving boards?
That's what it looked like, I thought they were too.
So they used to be, like, my understanding of the old bridge, before, you know, the new bridge was that one lane. The bridge was actually designed just to be a 2-lane bridge structure, and those outside areas were for fishing. And then with the added traffic between Gaston and Mecklenburg is when it was striped for a 4-lane, 4 very tight lanes. And then we got rid of the fishing area.
What about the light rail bridge piece?
So the light rail bridge will be a separate bridge structure to the north, is what we're planning. It will have to be a separate structure due to the vibrations of the train versus the highway. But we are coordinating the 2 structures very closely, thinking through the spans, because spans of a highway bridge, the piers in the water can be much longer than what the light rail bridge would need to be. But because that is navigable waters, we can't have piers all through, you know, zigzagging through the water. So we've been, working with the design teams for the highway project and the light rail project to make sure those are coordinated. But they will be 2 separate bridge structures, probably separated by at least 20 or so feet. But looking like the light rail will be on the north side.
When is the date?
The date for the bridge project, this one is, programmed for construction, I believe, in 23. NCDOT is well aware, of the need to complete this project as well as the bridge replacement over the Southport prior to any major construction beginning on I-85. So we're really able to push to expedite this project to get it out in front of the I-85 widening. Along with the bridge replacement is the intersection improvements of West Catawba and Wilkinson. So we've been working with that. It was funded to construct a northbound right turn lane on NC7 and extend the existing westbound left turn lane on Wilkinson. But looking at the future traffic projections, what's out there now and then future with everything that's been approved, the reduced conflict intersection really looks to be a better option for this. So what I'm showing on the screen is an offset reduced conflict intersection, lower cost, reduced footprint versus the conventional intersection improvement project as it was originally scoped. Better traffic performance, we're looking at a level C versus a level D with the conventional intersection improvement project for, that would be the all movement intersection. Available capacity for future development likely to occur with the light rail project along 74. Improved safety, higher safety for pedestrians, and reduction in accidents. So again, this one will be constructed with the Catawba River Bridge project. This is not final. There is going to be, I think, a meeting with Belmont to review some things, you know, as the design consultant is working on this intersection improvement project. So more to come on this one, but this is the latest design that we had on file, so I did want to show that. Right-of-way beginning in 22 with construction in 23. This one also has a higher cost estimate that we have to work through. So originally this was programmed at $2.275 million, and the most recent cost estimates for this are $7.1 million. So we will have to work through that. Another project that is in the current state transportation improvement program, but does have to be reprioritized, is intersection improvements at NC 273 or Lower Armstrong and South Point Road. That one right now is in the state transportation improvement program to construct a roundabout at this location with right-of-way scheduled for FY28 and construction in future years. Again, this one will have to be reprioritized. It is not considered a committed project. So that is one that was going through the process to be reprioritized in this current round of reprioritization, P6, that's been halted. So more information about that. But that one is programmed at $4 million for that one. And so we were in the process of developing the next state transportation improvement program, and that's P6 that I keep talking about, but that has been halted right now due to funding availability for new projects with all of these new cost estimates across the state. I mean, you've heard the updated cost estimates for just the projects in the Belmont area, so you can imagine, you know, what that looks like statewide. So because of the low initial cost estimates, again, statewide, rising cost of right-of-way, utilities, and construction really, you know, caused the outlook for any new projects to not look so great. So NCDOT, a statewide work group, had sided with the Board of Transportation consensus from the board of halting P6.0. So no new projects will be funded this round. We're trying to think through the programming of the next state transportation improvement program and what that looks like. I've actually got a statewide meeting tomorrow. We'll be looking at some alternatives to reprogramming the STIP. So more to come on that, but these are projects that we had actually submitted in this current round of prioritization. So quite a few projects here in Belmont, including the Belmont Mount Holly Loop is what we call it. That's what's in our plans. You refer to it as the Southport Parkway. That is what that project is. We did submit the project in its entirety from NC 273 North Main Street, up in Mount Holly, down to the southern end of the peninsula at South Point Road. Looking at that to construct a 4-lane roadway on a new location. We knew that that project was not going to score well. I mean, it's hundreds of millions of dollars for that. But we know the growth pressures here, not only in Belmont, but also Mount Holly. And getting this in the system for prioritization really allowed us to get started on an express design. And we really jumped ahead of some other projects because you're constantly getting questions, I know your staff is, about, okay, this is on the long-range transportation plan. We're trying to develop this area. What does this mean? And so we're really trying to work through that. So that is underway. It's been delayed a little more than I was hoping, and that is with all the consultants really being pulled off of the express design to work on these updated cost estimates, but I'm hoping that we'll get back started on that express design sooner than later. I also mentioned that we had submitted the Wilkinson Boulevard Park Street intersection for grade separated interchange for P6. We had also submitted intersection improvements at NC 273 and NC 7, so Keener and Catawba, to do some turn lanes there. We had submitted the widening for South Point Road from R.L. Stowe Road to Henry Chapel Road, looking at doing a 4-lane roadway there, most likely a 4-lane divided. And we also submitted South New Hope Road from Union New Hope Road to the South Carolina state line, also to widen to a 4-lane roadway. We do have funded projects to widen South New Hope from Pittman Road in Gastonia to Union New Hope, so this would have been the next segment of that. So those are, again, projects that we had submitted. We know those are priorities, not only for Belmont, but they scored well enough within all of our projects within the Gaston, Cleveland, Lincoln area, county area, to submit for prioritization.
So if 6.0 is halted, did you just sort of carry that forward to 7.0, or is there a new process coming out? Do we know?
So we don't quite know what that's going to look like yet. So as the statewide work group meets monthly, we're working to determine that. So we do know that there still has to be a state transportation improvement program that's adopted by the Board of Transportation, the NCDOT Board of Transportation, by December 2022. So there has to be some sort of program, and what that looks like is still yet to be determined. So right now we have a 10-year STIP. The first 6 years of the current STIP are considered committed projects. The last 4 years are considered developmental. But it's one document. One of the things that has been, the ideas that has been floated is maybe you have a committed STIP, and then a separate document is this developmental STIP. Because it is confusing to the public when they see a project like the roundabout at South Point Road, that it's in the 10-year STIP, but yet it still has to be reprioritized. It could drop out. It could land itself in earlier years. Every time it has to be reprioritized, so it gets a little confusing. So looking at options for that, but we do know that we have to move forward with the next step. And then what that looks like for P7, which we were expecting to start in 2023, I don't know what that's going to look like yet. But we felt with halting P6, typically the next steps would be, with our projects that we submitted in P6, we would get scores from NCDOT, quantitative scores, which we will still get. So we'll still see how our projects are scoring in relation to other regional projects, projects within our division and our region, and then also statewide. But the next step would be to go out for public comment, and then we would add local input points to these projects. And we felt that going out to the public, knowing that we were not going to get any new projects funded, was just not being transparent. It was going to cause confusion and a lot of staff time, work into DOT when we knew nothing new was going to get funded. So that is why we decided to halt that process. It's gonna allow NCDOT time to complete project estimate updates, which are still ongoing statewide. It's gonna allow the MPOs and RPOs time to think through this. So, you know, we may be faced out of our board, you know, we may be told, you need to reprioritize as the MPO, the projects that are committed and see how those shake out. And so those are gonna be hard decisions that the MPO board is gonna have to make. But we don't know exactly what that's gonna look like yet. And then the HALT allows the work group, NCDOT, we're gonna continue to evaluate the various options for creating that next draft step. So, again, more to come. I don't really have the answers, but, I've promised our board representatives, Mr. Turner is our chair, Ms. Stowe is on the board too. So as soon as I have information, I will pass that along to the board. Any new developments out of the work group that I can pass along, I will be, and then you're all welcome to share, with your full council.
Are there that many projects in the state taking that money?
Say that again.
Are there that many projects in the state of North Carolina that are taking that money?
No money.
I'm not sure how many projects are currently in the 10-year SIP.
As far as the total number of individual projects, what I can tell you is, in the current 10-year STIP, it is over-programmed, over-budgeted based on, the department did a huge evaluation of about 1,000 different estimates, utilities, construction, right-of-way. We looked at all of these projects, and it's over-programmed and committed over $7 billion. Okay, and if you add non-committed, then it goes up from there. So there's a lot of things in place from our end, trying to figure out, are these, basically, there's better estimates than we had before. Just like in the case of I-85, there may be some areas where we need to look at it to see if that's really where it is. And from a value engineering perspective, there's a huge emphasis on looking at projects to see if there are opportunities to save costs to keep a project on in, quite honestly.
So what you're saying is there's not a lot of availability for money?
It is in all, it's a statewide issue, it's a regional issue, and it's a division issue. When you look at the bucket for funding through STI, it's all of it.
Wow. Before you move on to the rail trail, can you just give me a high-level review of the Catawba Crossing?
Yes.
Unless your years don't go out that far.
So, we are working on Catawba Crossings. We're currently conducting the feasibility study. So, well underway with this. We had our first round of public meetings months ago. Unfortunately, all of this kicked off right as the pandemic was hitting, so we had to do everything virtual for that first round of public involvement. But we are looking at Catawba Crossings would be a new corridor, a new roadway from NC 279 South New Hook Road over to I-485. So it's about six and a half miles. And actually, we've extended that a little further to go to NC 160 or Still Creek over in Mecklenburg County. So looking at this as a boulevard facility, one of the things we're trying to do with public involvement is really pushing the reimagination of what this corridor could be. It is not the Garden Parkway, the once funded Garden Parkway, which was a tolled freeway facility. This is not what we're working on. So we are working on what will be a 4-lane divided boulevard, median divided, at-grade connections, bike ped accommodations along the way, 45 miles per hour, posted speed, no control of access, or very limited control. Again, looking at that multimodal and not a toll road. So we are going through the process now. These are the primary goals of the feasibility study that we're working on: identifying key public and stakeholder needs and concerns, engaging the public and stakeholders, evaluating that the project as a long-term transportation improvement We're looking at an NC route designation for the new roadway, which is really critical when we look to submit the project for future rounds of funding, P7, what that looks like. Looking at project funding scenarios at federal, state, and some local levels, and really positioning the project for inclusion in a future state transportation improvement program. So we are looking to have our second round of public involvement in November. So more information will be coming out about that. We've been finalizing kind of traffic tech memo. We've been looking at benefit cost analysis, funding scenarios, a host of different documents that will all be unveiled in November. What that public meeting looks like is yet to be determined. We would like to have some sort of in-person meeting in a location where we can spread out. We've been contacting a number of the churches down South Point Road, looking at, could we have an in-person meeting with an online platform for public to give input as well, but looking at November right now for that second round.
So if we can't afford a roundabout the next decade, what is realistically the timeline for building that new road?
I had the same question.
I'll beat you to it, Mark.
So, we're looking at federal options. There's federal grants. There's there's the build program. There's infra grants. We don't know what the next federal transportation bill is going to look like. Is there going to be some sort of mega project, pot of money out of that? We don't know. What is the split going to be as far as what our division is responsible for, or region versus Mecklenburg County, because the project is about 70% in Gaston County, 30%. I believe, maybe 60-40, what that split looks like. But it's a very expensive project, and we're going to have to think through, is there alternative funding mechanisms that we need to look at? And I'll kind of cover some of that with, we've got a lot more needs than there's funding available, statewide for just Army. So that's one thing that we need to start thinking about.
Very heavy lift.
I can go ahead and buy a house down there, not have to worry about it.
You can re-roof your house.
Yeah.
We had a question about that several years ago. Should I go ahead and re-roof my house? Call it in.
Sure. All right, another project that is funded, that Tiffany had asked that I touch on, is the Belmont Rail Trail. So we do have $1.9 million in funding that's allocated for this project. That right now is programmed for right-of-way. Looking at a phasing option, and you can see the 3 phases there. Next steps, I know the NPO as well as the city has approved an alignment option different from what was originally approved in the State Transportation Improvement Program. So waiting, I believe, for NCDOT approval of that route amendment. And also, we will need to figure out funding for construction of that, because right now all that's funded is funding for right-of-way. Quickly touching on some of our other planning efforts, we are updating our long-range transportation plan. This is a fiscally constrained 30-year project, 30-year plan. We have included projects within Belmont, so you can see in Horizon Year 2025, these are projects that are funded in bold. Again, we've talked about the Catawba River Bridge replacement. We've talked about the intersection improvement with West Catawba and 74. Something else that's included in our long-range plan is an extension of Hazeline Avenue. That project is not funded. It's not in the current State Transportation Improvement Program, but it does score well enough in our, high enough in our internal ranking methodology that it did land in the Horizon Year 2025. I can tell you that's not going to happen in 2025, but it did score high enough to be in Horizon Year 2025. In Horizon Year 2035, again, these are projects that we expect to be complete and open to traffic by December 31st of that horizon year. So for horizon year 2035, December 31st of 2035, we expect the I-85 widening project to be complete, the improvements to the Wilkinson Main Street intersection, also the NC7 improvements that are with the I-85 widening project, and then intersection improvements at Wilkinson and Park. In horizon year 2045, you'll notice that now these are not bolded because they are not projects that are included or committed in the current STIP. Would be the interchange that we talked about, we had submitted for P6, intersection improvements at Park and Keener that we had submitted, as well as the roundabout at NC 273 and South Point Road. We don't have any projects showing up for horizon year 2050, and then we also have some unmet needs: Catawba Crossings, Belmont, Mount Holly Loop, South Point Road widening, and that widening of South New Hope from Union New Hope Road to the state line. So again, this is just a fiscally constrained, long, it's a long-range transportation plan. So what we do is we expect so much money to be available to us through horizon year 2050. And we have projects, hundreds of projects from all of our communities within the 3 counties that we go through an internal scoring process that we list in rank order, and then we know how much money could be available to us through horizon year 2025. We show those as in the horizon year 2025, and then we move to the next horizon year and so on. So we have gone out for public comment for this. It actually was in the month of August. We bring this back to our board, the public comments that we received. The board will see that on Thursday at your meeting, just to recommend approval of our responses to the public comments received. And then we are working to draft the chapter content. We will have that back to our board in January as a full draft document to release for public comment in February with approval in March. So that's kind of the timeline for that. I've talked about the Catawba Crossings. We've touched on the Silver Line light rail project, exciting for our area, specifically for Belmont and the future station here in Belmont. So proposed 29-mile light rail project from Belmont through Center City, Charlotte, town of Matthews, with a potential extension into Union County. So a refined, locally preferred alignment was approved by the CATS Policy Board back in April of 2021. And with that newly adopted alignment, we'll continue to move the project forward into more detailed design and environmental review. So phase 2 for this project is a 15% design. Right now, the city of Charlotte is looking at that 15% design going to 485. We're going to start having some discussions at the county level about what that means for Gaston County, what that cost is for a 15% design, where that funding may come from, what the benefits of doing the design work now are, what the deliverables from that will be. So more to come on that. We've got a meeting with city and county managers and CATS in the next few weeks, I believe. That's on the calendar. And so Belmont's also participating in the Silver Line TOD, Transit-Oriented Development Study, along with the rail trail. So a lot of exciting things going on with this. We're also working on the Centralina, and CATS is working on the Connect Beyond Regional Mobility Initiative that we've been involved in, looking at the layers of mobility for 12-county area, including counties in North and South Carolina. So thinking through that high-capacity transit, light rail, commuter rail is another thing we talk a lot about here in Gaston County. What the fixed route bus network is going to look like. Gastonia Transit is an existing fixed route. What does extensions of that look like in the future? The demand response, we have Gaston County Access here in Gaston County. So what all these layers of mobility and how they work together to create this regional mobility study. So plan recommendations are now out. This is a blueprint for building that mobility network, so you can go to connect-beyond.com. These plan recommendations are out with 5 mobility moves. Those are the key recommendations. You can, those are out for public comment, I think through maybe the end of October, so you can take a look at that. But again, we have a lot of mobility needs and not a lot of funding that's gonna fulfill those needs. So you can see what we have funded. This is the current 10-year STIP funded projects for highway, bike ped, aviation, and public transit. This is just Gaston County, funded projects in Gaston County. But you can also see the unfunded projects, and that doesn't even include the Silver Line or Catawba Crossings. Gaston is working on an airport runway realignment that's not included in that as well. But we need to start thinking through funding opportunities. State, regional, and division, you can see the funding that's available over a 10-year period. And if I go back to what just our needs are, there's just not funding. So we have got to be thinking through alternative funding sources, what that means for federal state grants, what that means for localized options, local sales tax potentially, or some other things. So we are partnering with the Gaston Business Association to kind of start thinking through what that may look like. So more to come on that, but you'll certainly be hearing, because again, we have a lot of mobility needs and not a lot of funding right now. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. And if you've got any technical questions, I'll turn it over to my friends at DOT.
Southport Parkway, Belmont, Mount Holly Loop, will there be a ramp onto I-85? I know there's been discussions about that.
So that is one thing that we do have on our comprehensive transportation plan for an interchange, and we have asked the project consultants that are doing that express design to specifically look at that. Is that possible? Federal Highway Administration has where, you know, interchanges can't be within a mile of each other, what that looks like. So it is right on the cusp of a mile. So we have asked them to specifically look at that and let us know if that would ever be an option.
Yeah, I've got one other question. I mean, just looking at all the shortfalls, the traffic circle on South Point up Armstrong is something that's really necessary. The money that is already allocated for the revamping of exit, is it 26?
27.
For the Belmont Abbey, is it 26?
26.
Okay, so right now, you know, I know Belmont Abbey would like that realigned so it opens up right at the school. I think that's kind of what they were wanting. But we've got a fully functional intersection right now. Might need some dressing up, but we have one that's functional. Can that money be reprogrammed to something else? Because the need on the peninsula is acute. The need to redo that ramp, in my mind, is not acute. I mean, it's functional, but we've got a real problem, logjam on the peninsula. That the time horizon was 2029. Now, who knows what it's going to be? So, I mean, there's no relief in sight for the peninsula.
So I think that is wrapped into the I-85 widening project. So I don't think that we can pull that out. I'm looking at.
So there's no latitude for redistribution at all.
No, it really, the way the money is allocated per project, right? So once a region say, hey, I've got $500 million, now I want to change it, move that $500 million. It's really not how the NCDOT legislation is laid out. But what's going to be part of that conversation as we look forward is what does the FIF look like in the next 24, 30, 50 years? How do we, 33, how do we get that? How do we look at all those projects? Because to your point, there are a lot of projects and the costs are high, the funding is said, and that's whether you change the way, in our board of transportation is looking at inflation. Historically, we've had 1% inflation fixed for the first 5 years, and after the 5 years, it's fixed. And so they're looking, is that enough? And so, you know, the obvious answer is typically everything we look at is more than inflation. And so I think there's gonna be some discussions with the NCO and with the department to try to figure out what the TIP is gonna look like in the future. So that's really probably gonna be the time and place to have those discussions. Because they've already begun, you know, already having some other locations that, hey, our project scheduled to move, or the funding is an issue, but I have a dire need, right? And obviously you all have that. As the state of North Carolina does, right? Of all the folks moving in and the growth, and so it is a challenge. It is going to be definitely a challenge to figure out transportation finance, how do we fund what we need.
It seems to me that if we want these things done in any reasonable time, that we need to explore alternative funding, like Randy was talking about, whether it's sales tax or, you know, bond or something. Because I just, if we feel like these things need to get done, I don't think, you know, done in a reasonable amount of time. I don't think sitting around waiting to see how this all shakes out, even if it does shake out, it's a long time from now. Or, you know, as you know, it's not the most popular thing in some quarters, but as long as General Assembly allows us to, obtaining certain improvements through the mitigation, transportation mitigation process with the traffic impact analysis and everything, which is how we were able to get 1/3 of the Southport Parkway, and maybe some other improvements. I don't know if that's necessarily the best way to do it, is to, you know, here comes a development that's going to create more traffic, and now, all right, well, we'll make them do certain improvements, but, you know, that might be the most realistic way of getting something done in the meantime, as long as the General Assembly lets us do it.
Yeah, and Randy's the messenger, so none of this is her fault, but, she's delivering bad news with a smile, thank you for doing that. But clearly the MPO is not prioritized projects for Belmont for the rest of the decade. And so hopefully when DOT has more money for you to prioritize projects, we can get projects funded for at least for the Peninsula and other areas in the 2030s. But there's no guarantee on that. And so it's going to have to be alternative funding or, like you say, through the TIA process, as long as we're allowed to do that.
With some of the stuff on the Peninsula, though, is it even, would the required mitigation be too cost prohibitive to undertake the project? Because they need to widen all South Point Road between these two intersections. Is that cost prohibitive to even undertake the project?
And so that's when you know, we work with Mark's staff at Division 12 as to what improvements are allowed, and I would assume that you would prefer to have private developers build this infrastructure at their expense, not at your expense, to the extent that we can, like we're doing at the Southport Parkway.
Yeah.
That's a greenfield project that was easier, but you're constrained by right of way and state law and everything else. So there's no easy solution.
No easy way out.
No, and I assume that removing the bridge between North and South Carolina down at the end of New Hope Road is not an option. So that was my solution.
Well, I think that would violate the dormant.
We can find a record in the courthouse.
Oh, problem. I mean, every article I read is we have budget surplus and we're #1 in the country for business. And I don't know.
They're just not.
I'm kind of at a loss for words now that there's no money to do anything. But we have budget surplus and #1 in business.
And I'm old enough to remember when the General Assembly was telling you to spend down your surplus and get this project delivered.
Correct.
Yes. Congratulations.
We are in a bind. DOT's in a bind. I know and statewide, you have a very unfavorable audit of the state auditor. I know that the costing projects, were not costed appropriately, and that's why we're seeing some of these increases in these road projects. Jim's right. I mean, we're going to have to take a lot of this lift on ourselves by whatever vehicle we can find that will provide that lift. Because nobody likes it when we say, well, we've identified the problem, but it's not ours, and we can't do anything about it. So, you know, I would like us to meet as transportation committee internally, and, you know, what may be is great. I mean, theoretically, it's all great, but we need to look at what can we do, you know, what is within our means, what is practical. Because it's just gonna get worse. The construction's not gonna stop. It's binding up. We're trying to force, you know, 20 pounds of vehicles through a 10-pound pipe, and it's just not working. So, I don't know exactly what the answer is, but it's not what we currently have.
So one small bit of good news, the planning board did, recommend, some amendments to the land development code, among other things, to, lower the threshold of, requiring a transportation impact analysis for, south of the intersection of, Nixon Road and, South Point Road, so on the Peninsula. So, and Shelley can, what is it like now? 30% of what DOT would typically, you reduced it to like, yeah. So we're gonna, I'm assuming that we approve said recommended amendments, you know, we'd get more, even some of the smaller developments, so would trigger, an impact analysis, and then we'd see what the required mitigations were. You know, that's not a complete solution, but, you know, could help. You know, again, as long as the General Assembly allows us to, do such things.
Anything else? Thanks. Thank you, Tiffany, for your statements.
Thanks, Randy.
Thank you, Randy.
Mark and Byron, did you have anything to add to that, or do you have, we ask you questions about current things?
Well, before you go to line.
All right. I mean, we'll be glad to take any questions.
Okay.
One of the things that I know you're looking into is what's going on at Old, as far as it, I think we discussed if the lights are working properly and if they're not working properly, so can you tell me about what's going on with that?
We have not noticed any of the signal malfunctioning in any way. I'm not exactly sure, it's observation. We get complaints quite frequently, and every time we check, we've never found anything operationally wrong with the signal. So I'm not entirely sure, since we're not here every day to observe the traffic patterns, I can't say for certain what's going on.
Okay, I know there was one discussion about something being reset and whether we had keys and something was happening on our end, or do you not notice anything different?
No.
Okay. All right, well, the other piece of it is that, okay, on South Point Road, can we get a protected left coming north on South Point Road, turning into South Point Hospital? There's been a lot of discussion about that. Right now, there's not.
Look into that.
Okay. That would certainly help. And the question was, are those lights synchronized at all? And the other part of it, is there a way to do something with time of day with regard to people coming out of the Harris-Peter intersection? Because in that trip, you're backing up traffic all the way down South Point Road, as opposed to them having to wait long.
We can look in all of this way.
That would be helpful.
The timing of multiple signals can be an issue, or a cost. Typically, that's a capital project versus a maintenance type issue for us. We'd like to look at the accommodating plan
And would it cost to have to protect the left?
No, that's a phasing requirement. We'll have to go through our engineering post criteria for that, but that's something that's in the phase. The and the reprogramming of both signals.
A few years back, someone had mentioned having a signalization system that has like a camera and can capture real time, like cars stacking and then change the signalization. Is that something that's being used anywhere? Or, I'm looking at this list, the smallest project was 4 million. That seems like something maybe more in our reach.
Right. And I'm gonna, the word is, well, in areas where they have tried that, they have not worked with.
Okay.
We haven't really seen that technology. It's high maintenance technology. It's what we've been told. You've got to really have somebody there to reprogram that, to make it efficient. We get that question quite often, particularly with the age of technology that we've got, that we see in advances in our world. Hey, versus our smartphones and all the things that does with mapping. So we're just not there yet on the signal side.
Where has it not worked in the state? Because I heard in Durham, they were using that, whatever it's called, 5.0, and I thought they were getting good results from that.
When I was involved with Liberty Concord, 20 similar area that our traffic management folks have cited for us that they were not in favor of. But even the town where he is, that's out. That's what we do.
What about our sought after, crosswalk at Park and Catawba? Is that?
So there is good news.
Oh,
Thank you for bringing it up.
Oh, we finally found,
Our-
well, I've got some.
Our eternal optimist brought it up too. I'm proud of you, Jim. So DOT has agreed to allow us to install a crosswalk on the south side of that intersection of Catawba and Park. And Jerry's working on that. We're gonna get that surveyed so we see exactly where that needs to be. We'll need to work with a signal, signal plan firm, for the pet heads, but we can, at our expense, put in a crosswalk on the south side of Catawba Street, crossing Park Street.
Okay. Well, I do have some more good news though, that Wake Forest beat Florida State 35-14 on Saturday. That was good news.
Can that be entered into the record?
I want that.
So who pays for the sidewalk? We do?
The crosswalk, we will.
So,
And there's a very slight, sidewalk extension
okay.
on the southwest quadrant of that intersection.
Is there a way with the sidewalk, like, can we, like, make the road, is there gonna be an island in between it? So
No.
it's just gonna be one sidewalk,
One crosswalk.
one crosswalk?
The pet heads, if that's put in a call for a red light to cross.
Yes.
So you can't put any, like, concrete, like a little island to stand on or anything?
Not on the south side. If that becomes a bigger project, and we are looking at a crosswalk on the north side of that intersection, but you get that big slip lane going on toward downtown. That's too wide for a crosswalk without a pedestrian refuge island, is my understanding. So then that becomes a bigger project.
Yeah.
And we can make this stuff really complicated.
I was just,
So the easiest thing is.
I don't like crossing that road in my car.
Well, instead of, their signals, this thing long, instead of thing run.
While we're doing that, can we do it up here by the gas station and like across from AT&T? There's nowhere to walk there either. Can we strike that or?
Do crosswalks at the intersection of South Main and South Central in front of First Presbyterian Church. We looked at that several years ago and found that it was a really simple thing to do. It got really complicated because of the signal detection loops and the separation between the stop bar for cars, the crosswalk for pedestrians.
Can we just put like somewhere to walk painted there?
We'll take a look at it. Well, the sign says
Like people pull the whole way up so you can't walk in front. So it's pretty active for
It's
walking.
a busy pedestrian intersection.
Yeah.
What was the location?
South Main Street and South Central.
Why was it decided to put the crosswalk on Keener, and Catawba on the south side, not the north side? Now, I understand the argument, it's a little more complicated, but I've noticed people, when the police were trying to direct traffic there, after the last Christmas parade we had, which went in East Belmont, you've got some people who move pretty slowly, women with strollers, et cetera. So my only concern would be if there's no safety island, we gotta make sure that that light is timed to stay red long enough to allow for people who may walk at less than an average pace. Follow the logic there, because that is a concern. I don't want someone to get a quarter, a half, 2/3 of the way through, and then be faced with a signal change, and not have that refuge island.
And typically, the factor that, you know, the crossing's kind of from start to finish into the pedestrian space.
There's a shorter distance to cross on the south side, and there's not sidewalk all the way on the north side. So there's no sidewalk on the north side of Catawba Street, west of, Keener, so.
Well, the only thing that makes it more attractive is that possibility of a refuge island there, in case pedestrian couldn't make it across. At least you feel like you're protected somewhat from the traffic. You know.
There's no sidewalk there, that's it.
So you don't have to.
You'd have to go-
Sidewalk is not gonna-
Right.
So you'd have to like go north,
Yeah.
across the road to run to the island from the south sidewalk.
Yeah.
Just one more thing. I know there was some previous discussion about that curve, on, by McLean, and the Seven Oaks, that people were taking the curve too fast and riding into the McLean, common areas. Did anything come of that?
That's at Lower Armstrong Road,
Yeah.
273, and I believe you put
They have
in,
a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit there.
Yeah.
yeah, I believe you put in more signage. I don't, my understanding was that didn't meet the qualifications for a DOT guardrail, but the neighborhood could have put it on their, off the right of way into their property. I don't know if they've done that or not, but you did, you improved the signage and made it more reflective, I believe.
I don't know how many Chevrons, but there's several Chevrons, we probably added a reflective part on the post as well.
Yeah, and we did, cross-check the concerns with our police department and the record, and we did not have near the record of wrecks that the neighbors were, suggesting, which means people were running off the road and didn't want to get the police involved, so they left. So, I'm not suggesting that they may have been drinking and driving or doing something illegal, but they didn't wait around for the police.
What about the pavement in front of AT&T, where all that sunk hole is?
So, when we met with DOT staff last week, Blake Guppy was gonna get us an update on the resurfacing schedule for Gadsden County and Belmont, and, because that was one section. You resurfaced Main Street downtown several years ago, and then west, like, or south of, Seacrest. But there was that middle section between Central and Eagle, or Central and Seacrest, that was left out. And thinks that may be on the next round of paving, or still in the current, just was delayed.
Even just getting patched would be helpful. A lot of people cross the double yellow line to avoid it.
Is that where it's coming?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can definitely get it patched, and Blake's actually at the, there.
It'd be great to have pavement patching, I think, equally as important at this point.
I drive a Jeep and I still swerve.
Yeah, people go to the other lane, kind of scary. Well, great, thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Bring us good news next time.
So you're telling me there's a change?
Yes, so we're getting a crosswalk. The takeaway is we're getting a crosswalk
That we're paying for.
that we're paying for, yes. So letting us install a crosswalk.
Saying thank you to the Oracle, so I did call one time and thank you for that.
Good. I appreciate it.
That was funny, because when I called up and they weren't sure who it was, and the lady I spoke to, I said, well, I wanted to thank you, she said, let me go find him. Nobody called her.
Thank y'all.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome to stay, but you're all set.
All right. Thanks for making the trip, Shelby. All right, next item on the agenda, discussion on job description for chief information officer.
Thanks. I'd like for Kevin Kraus to come up and present this item.
Oh, no,
You get the donut?
I don't think this.
You're the last person on the agenda, you don't
Hey,
need
you gonna build
it.
He needs it for next month.
That was some exciting stuff, wasn't it? Transportation, always
Almost
good.
as exciting as job description.
Hey, well, they're both, agenda items because we're growing. So that's the things they do have in common. So, as we have grown, we've also implemented, a lot of new technology, from, our bill pay to our work order systems. So this IT position has grown quite a bit. I want to give this to you, give this, and pass that around. That job description that you have in your agenda packet is quite large. So what this kind of does is shrinks down these job duties and shows you what they're like, and how they've changed over a period of time. I've got one here too. So this position, I think, maybe it was just created just a few years ago. The person that's in it, Seth, actually started in the utility billing department. They recognized his skills and, he morphed into a IT service coordinator. Our manager would call it the router, resetter. But that role has expanded quite a bit. He actually did quite a bit of things, early on. But over time, you can see, there it says the May 2020. The things in yellow are things that were added to, his plate over time. And you can see there were about 8 extra things that were added, from cybersecurity management, organizing our, projects. That's one thing is, that he does do as well as organizing projects and also reviewing contracts and contract negotiation. And I think, you made a presentation a while back and talked about, how much money, that he has saved in this position and basically paid for his salary. And we're still seeing that quite a bit. And then if you flip on the back, you can see the current responsibilities, and all those in yellow are added since everything on the first page. You can see there's quite a bit of stuff there. A lot of it is just new, software and systems that we've added. I put down here the very last one with the 4 stars, you'll see that's something that's not, in his job description, but it's something that, this role, he's been able to help us out quite a bit just because of his knowledge. And he has actually put together these training videos for the staff. So as new staff comes in, if we have any kind of turnover in those departments, we have videos and stuff that they can watch to bring them up to speed. So we've recognized that there's a big change in this position, and, staff recommends a new job classification along with the job title. This job title of the chief, no, it's not chief information, but chief technology, what is it, chief?
Chief Information Officer.
Yeah, chief information officer. It's basically the same thing as a director, does that kind of work, because there's not a staff really to direct. This chief information officer is a title that's sort of interchangeable. The School of Government was a really big help. They offer a lot of training for this. I believe he also actually just completed, got a certification from the School of Government, for their, what is it called here, the certification from UNC School of Government, the Certified Government Chief Information Officer Program. And it also requires continuing education. So I wanted to bring this to you tonight, let you look at it and get some kind of consensus if you're okay, with this job description and job title. There's also, I included in here, the salary range. You can see the 3 cities. It's kind of difficult to find apples to apples on this position. A lot of larger cities have a large staff. Some cities may have one person that does it all. And you can see those 3 cities there, and the grade 22 fit right in line with those other places. So do you have any questions about the job classification?
Where did he get his undergraduate degree?
He doesn't have one yet, he's working on going to Penn State to get his undergrad.
His state.
My only question was, I was confused as to whether it was chief information officer or chief technology officer.
Well, it's supposed to be chief technology officer, that's right, not the CIO.
No.
Is there-
Is it?
Yeah,
That's what it says on the agenda.
Okay.
Well, just as long as it's consistent.
Consistent.
Yeah.
Because it says chief information officer in the agenda, but then once you read the description, it's chief technology.
It's,
Information technology,
well,
that's what it is, what it's called.
it is, but it's not chief, it's chief technology officer,
Okay.
CTO.
Whatever it's called.
I'm 99% sure on that, chief, yeah, it's chief technology officer. That came, like I said, from the School of Government. That's what their recommendation was for that.
That's right, so we didn't want to be confused with the public information officer and the chief.
CIO and the
Yeah.
CIO.
But, no, I mean,
I'll get there eventually.
we've got to keep good employees. Seth saves us a lot of money, and I don't know how we like, do anything, in terms of like technology without him, so.
Well, that was actually a thought I had, as far as, because like I know that he does everything. We ever call it, like, you know, in the event that stuff has an opportunity somewhere else, you know, given the complexity of this role, it might not be a bad idea to have somebody under him that he can work with to help him, but also is sort of like redundancy.
We use Apex technology as well. They are a service provider that does some of that resetting the router type work, some of those issues that you may have with your computer, you can put in a ticket, and they'll do some of those small things for us. We've talked about possibly eliminating that and then hiring an entry-level person that could be there and do all those little things for basically the same price as what, that's, what's it, again, Apex?
Yeah, Apex. But, yes, absolutely. Seth is very marketable, and IT jobs are very well paying and in high demand. And we can't compete with an IT job that, for the work he's doing in the private sector, we could never compete with that salary.
Yeah.
So if he were to leave, we'd be in a bind.
Mhm.
And so, we don't have a bench, because all I know to do is press the reset button on the router. So
Which is a real concern.
Yeah.
Mark's point is that if you decide to go and have an opportunity, and have to go in a couple of weeks, we would be in a bind.
Yes.
So what's the, just in that scenario, what would be our, right now, what's our fallback position?
Well, one, I think that we need to rely on him to provide us with as much as he can of where to go, what to do on the contracts and the services that we have. I mean, I don't think we're in the position right now, budget-wise, to duplicate that service, and we don't need that exact same level of service there just to prepare for that. I don't know if there's anybody that we currently have on staff to try to impart this with.
No, so we do contract with Apex Technology, and they just make sure stuff works. Like when the printer doesn't work, we call them, you don't call staff. So they can make sure that our IT functions, but they're not doing all this level of work. So, you know, we're what, a quarter into the fiscal year, but the answer is we would need to have a bench in IT and really form. We're big enough now that we really need an IT department.
Yeah.
And have, you know, this CTO, and it would be Seth initially, and, you know, things change over time, but to have backup in place. But also, I mean, we run Seth ragged. He's in every building, and he's in every meeting. He's working on all the stuff. So there's only one Seth. So he needs help just doing what he's currently doing.
He has a contract management software as well, that that's one of the things that he puts a lot of stuff, he documents a lot of stuff, so we have that information if he were to ever go. That's one of the things that he thought was very important when he took the last step in his job, title. So he has the documentation a lot of that, so as his supervisor, Kevin, will be, that we have access to that information too.
Yeah.
So, but, yeah.
I agree with everything everybody said, but you don't always have to have a second person in case somebody leaves. It's kind of an expensive way to move forward with everything. You know, for a job like this, I think he should write his own handbook and then have a list of all the phone numbers, contact information. Because it might not be, I mean, you never know what can happen to anybody. But then there should be somebody here who can somewhat be cross-trained. I mean, every function of my office, there's a a point person and there's a secondary person. Doesn't mean the secondary person knows exactly what to do, but they know where to reference a checklist of, you know, keeping you out of trouble until you hire that key man to come back in and then take off. Like, we shouldn't have that risk. We should be able to write a handbook, have the operating procedures written down, have a go-to person who knows those numbers. That should be in place for every major position within the city.
That sounds great, I agree.
It's not hard. I've had interns write handbooks.
Okay,
It's
well,
not
I
hard to
will be
write down what
glad
you do.
for your intern.
Position though, it's so specific to certain things, like the cybersecurity stuff that he does is so specific to IT that he could sit here and talk to Adrian and Kevin and I for hours, and we wouldn't, I mean, he could write it down, we would never be able to do what he does in the back end for cybersecurity, and what he does on a daily basis.
But you should be able to hire somebody outside to come in, and they should be able to operate it.
And that's where he has a lot of that documentation that we thought was really important, so we have that information. But and Apex has a lot, they're kind of the backup at this point, Apex has a lot of that information, he's taken it to another level for us.
Because there's a lot of IT consultants around. The idea would be you bring somebody in for 90 days to help you transition, and they would understand the language, instead of them coming in and trying to figure out passwords, like, that's not okay.
We had to do that, and because he's had to do that, he's put us in a position now that we wouldn't have to do that.
Okay, I think we're on the same page. I think it's a good decision.
I think so too.
I didn't see the description. But nothing.
We do that on purpose. Just to make sure you're paying attention.
Well, you know, they used to do that. They do that with the phone books. They like make up, fake names so that if any, because phone books are copyrightable, and if they make up fake names, they look and see if somebody else had the same names, they know that's not a real name, you just copied our name, and then they'd be able to file, you know, back when people had phone books.
I was gonna say, Bill, what's say about phone books?
Okay, I need a list of that.
All right. Thank you.
Those are back when the Cowboys were good.
Thank you, Ryan. So, is there consensus to have this on the agenda in October for consideration? Thank you. And on Ryan's horrible comment about, boy, the 90s were good, weren't they?
Well, you know, I was watching the Steelers game yesterday.
That was not swell.
No, it wasn't. Oh well. So I get to watch my team play terribly tonight. Everyone.
I'll tell you, there's been a lot of upset.
Hey, riddle me this. Are we gonna have that, meeting at the park this week?
I have gotten back to me, actually. Make the most.
Okay.
And Council Turner, that was Thursday, and then I saw the agenda for the MPO board, and that's also Thursday, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we may want to reschedule that, especially if they haven't confirmed.
Yeah, Nikki hasn't gotten back to me.
Okay. So why don't we try to,
I'll try to see if we do next week.
Yeah.
I'll see if they can.
because I'd like for, everybody who can, again, I don't want to schedule something if we know we have a conflict.
Great turnout.
Virtual meeting, going back to virtual.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause I haven't seen anything
I was surprised Randy came in person.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
which she was supposed to be a week ago.
And that was on the 23rd.
Yeah.
See, that would have been Thursday, this coming Thursday, but we'll not do that since you have the NPO board meeting. Okay. So that's,
Make a motion to adjourn.
I will make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So, did you shut this one off?
Yeah, but I don't-